A tip of the virtual cap to you, and thank you for joining us here on the Pilot Money Guys podcast. Flight 60 already. Godfather, can you believe that? 60?
No, I can't. I can't
Crazy.
believe it.
And we're lucky. We have an honored guest on today, and we're calling this flight or episode, as we say, F35's and 529's, or at least that's what I'm calling it for now. On this podcast, we talk some aviation news and some fun-loving financial topics. I'm your host, wealth manager, former Air Force airlift and tanker pilot, major airline captain, Robert the Rubber Mallet Eklund. Of course, I'm joined by certified financial planner and former Air Force fighter pilot, former major airline pilot, Charlie the Godfather Mattingly. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it.
And we've got just a huge crew today. We've got the augmented crew, so we're also joined by newly minted leading edge financial planner, Nolan the Prodigy Clark. Welcome, Prodigy.
Good to be here, Rob.
Yes, good to see you. And last but definitely not least, we have a Naval Academy graduate, Navy Reserve F-35 instructor pilot who works at Lockheed Martin as well. And in his spare time, he's a faculty advisor at Georgetown University School of Business, I believe. We're thrilled to have Andy, the VizCap, Christopher on the show. I threw the on there, Andy. Hope that's okay.
Perfect.
Welcome, VizCap.
Great to be here.
And that's not his name, VizCap. That's his call sign, VizCap. So,
That's right.
Andy, what's your story behind that call sign?
Yes, VizCap, not a well-known term, I'd say, outside of the aviation world. But you think about it, the VizCap is we'll call him the bad guy, right? If you're doing like an air-to-air event and say it hangs out low in the valleys, whole idea is hang out and hide behind the radar signatures, but and then pops up out of nowhere, right? And you don't see him, and he suits back down. So I guess I was a quiet new guy when I joined my squadron. So he's kind of like a VizCap. He just hangs out in the corner, and I don't know, maybe they're making fun of me. I just didn't know it. And
yeah, I think that's the purpose of the call sign, to make fun of
That's
us.
exactly right.
That's just what happens. Yeah. To humiliate properly.
That's right.
Yeah, that's why I've tilted the call sign towards my own niceties, I guess.
Yeah. That's right.
Don't let a tanker pilot do call signs. He starts being nice.
I know it. I didn't want to argue with the Godfather, but it definitely breaks all the rules.
Yeah, it's too cool.
Yeah,
it's the first time.
Yeah.
My first call sign was Baka, B-A-C-A, which I think means dumb cow in Japanese. So there you have it. It got
Funny,
worse.
Guys
Worse
get more senior. They start changing their call signs. All of a sudden they're Viper. Or,
Yeah, we had.
I think that's how you
can't be Iceman. There's already an Iceman.
Yeah,
the last boss I worked for, great guy. His call sign, no kidding, was Turd. Turd Hyatt. And as he got promoted through the ranks, they're like, dude, you cannot be Lieutenant Colonel, General Turd. So they changed to something more boring. But anyway, that's when you finally have to grow up one day, you might have to have a call sign change.
That's right. Yeah.
I've never grown up. This is Peter Pan world right here. Hey, okay. So what we're doing today, folks, is F-35. We got an F-35 guru on. So that's our aviation news. We've got Andy Christopher again on the show. And Andy, well, what the heck? You've got all these things going on. You've got Georgetown faculty advisor. You have a master in science and finance from Georgetown. Are you still doing that?
Yeah, heck yeah. So still involved in that. So spent a couple years post Navy in the wealth management world, and then decided to get back to the roots, and that's where, as you mentioned, right now I'm in Lockheed Martin doing the F-35. I'm a sim instructor. We call contract instructor pilot. So they let the military guys fly the jets and take the students out and do all the fun stuff, and then we just get to hang out and play a big computer game all day, hang out in the back. Yeah,
I love it, man. And you're such a talented guy here. I did have a question for you. Now, why did the Air Force Academy turn you down?
That's right.
I kid.
That's embarrassing.
That's the
just
problem
embarrassing,
when you fly in the Navy, you people don't get it, right? If you're a Navy pilot, they're like, well, clearly you fly a plane, so you're in the Air Force, and you got like, well, we got to break this down. We got to talk about this.
Yeah.
Can't have this. Can't have this misperception
That's right.
existing. Yeah.
And your movies are quite a bit better than ours.
Yes.
Although I have been listening to the Iron Eagle soundtrack on repeat.
That's a good one. Classic.
Yeah. So tell us about, you were an F-18 guy back in the day, right? And then you transitioned to the F-35. Tell us just some stories, man. That's what we want to know. Charlie, what do you got at? What do you want to know here?
The best carrier story. I don't know.
Oh,
Did
yeah.
you do any? I don't know if you got the.
Were you on the boat?
In
Were you on
the
the boat?
desert, anything like that? Combat, anything like that?
Yeah. It's funny. So I was on the boat, as we say. By the way, the people who drive the boat, who are surface warfare, they hate it when you call it a boat because it's a ship. So of course now we call it the boat.
Yeah, now you got caught. Yeah.
Yeah.
Way to go. That backfired on him.
Yeah, you got to meet them. They're like, this is a really big ship. It's like kind of one of the biggest. Like, no, it's like a boat to me. Yeah.
I'm on a boat.
Yeah. So we call it the boat. So it's interesting. I F-18, a Super Hornet pilot when I did my 10 years active duty in the Navy, and I called myself the child of sequestration. So I joined my squadron right in 2012, and that was when everything kind of happened. So all the fun, I don't know, fun is the right word. All the deployments we were supposed to do all that time kind of went away. We stayed busy. Went out and did some weird, go out and do that month-long, 2 months exercise out in Hawaii. Took the George Washington, the aircraft carrier, around South America. We stayed busy, but we didn't do any of the traditional, at the time, deployments. That was when Syria and that conflict was getting busy, and quite a few friends who did that. But I didn't have any of those crazy experiences, and so kind of an atypical Navy experience. I would say my one craziest story would be actually my first flight ever in the Navy. So I was still a midshipman at the Naval Academy. In the summertime, they send you out and you go fly in the back seat, go to a squadron. So I got to go fly in the back of an F5 up in Fallon, Nevada, which is where Top Gun is. It's where the Navy does all their large force exercises. And we ended up actually having to eject on that flight. So it was my first flight
You
in the
ejected
Navy.
on your first flight?
That's right. Yeah.
Wow.
So we had a midair collision with an F-18 during a huge exercise, and we just start tumbling out of the sky. Of course, I don't know what's going on, and all of a sudden, just like boom, and we're out of there. And so that was it. That was flight number one. So I had a call sign for a short period of time, O'Toole, which stood for 1 takeoff, 0 landings, which is not a great record to have in aviation. It's the opposite of what you want.
Wow,
So
that's incredible.
So and then I think I had just had smooth sailing after that. It's like the aviation gods were like, we filled your crazy bucket up. So just enjoy the ride for the rest of it.
How cool is that though? You went back to the Navy Academy that fall, and you're like, "Hey,
I've already
I
ejected.
ejected."
Yeah,
What else?
that's
you
right.
got?
Yeah.
What'd you do?
Yeah. What'd you do this summer?
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
eject out F5. No big deal.
Oh, God.
Midair
big
with an
deal.
F-18. Holy cow!
That is
So
amazing.
you eject you. I obviously you weren't flying, right? So you have
No,
the F-18. What happened? How did the midair happen?
It was, it's one of those things where you've got 17, 20 planes and pretty, relatively small piece of sky in a dynamic environment. And, it kind of just happens that way. And
Were you guys like doing maneuvers or in the pattern, or where were you?
we were over the target area. We were the viz cap. So there you have it.
Yes.
So we were over the target area hiding. And then as soon as the strike package came across, we popped up out of the mountain and engaged some of the strikers. So that's how it happened. Yeah. And of course, I didn't know any of that at the time. I was pretty ignorant, and to the extent that I didn't even know we had a midair collision by the time I got, once we met up with the pilot and waited for the helo to come out, I was like, Is that normal? Is that?
Is this what we do every time?
Yeah, I'm trying to act like super cool.
I love it.
Like,
Sign me
wow,
up.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You guys do that every day?
Holy cow! Now you in the F5, you had to pull your own handles, right?
You do, yeah. So that was the other interesting. You get the seat brief, right? They give you
Yeah.
like, here's how it's going to work. Like, don't worry. Like, you're sort of like, oh, I guess I'll kind of pay attention. And it's not, if you're familiar, it's not the Martin Baker, good seat, if you will. It's like the old school Northrop Grumman. You wear your parachute, you set it in. Things got spider webs on it, and you're like, I hope I never need to use this. This is crazy.
It doesn't look like it's going to work.
No, yeah. You're like, this is not going to work.
There's a bunch of laundry in there, t-shirts and underwear and stuff packed in there.
Yeah, it looks like the treadmill in the garage. Like it's got everything on it. So, you got to pull your own handle. So the pilot went first, and we were calm out at that point because half the plane took off the left wing and the whole back half of the aircraft. So we're not talking, we're flipping end over end, and all of a sudden, and I don't know what's going on. The pilot punches out, and I'm like, well, I guess I should probably do that too. So I reached down to pull the handle.
Now, why weren't you talking? I don't understand. He's out of the airplane. You're still.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
Oh,
I'm in the front half. Yeah. So that was it. That was the start of my aviation career right there.
Holy cow! Did the F-18 guy punch out too?
Well, no, that was sort of the unfortunate part of it, that he was unfortunately killed on impact during that.
Well, that's what I was about to say,
so,
man. All kidding aside,
yeah,
you're lucky to be alive on that. I mean, seriously.
Wow.
Yeah, you look at that, the F5, and it's like that left wing was probably, I don't know, 6 feet from me. It's not a big plane, so it's we're talking milliseconds, right, between probably a lesson learned, no tragedy, to what wasn't, of course, a tragedy because we lost a life, and then what would be an even bigger tragedy, right? Of me and Sloppy, who was the pilot, is a Southwest guy now.
Oh, all right, yeah.
Meeting our demise at the same time, right? So that's for those in aviation. That's kind of that's the way it goes, right? And that's the name of the game sometimes.
That's incredible. And you're, like you said, the F5, for those that don't know, is like a T-38 essentially. So the wings are short and stubby. I mean, that might be a little bit longer than the T-38s, but
I think it's a MiG too, isn't it? Isn't that right?
MiG-28. Yeah,
MiG-28.
No one's been this close. No one's been this close before.
There you go. Oh my goodness. That's incredible. So were you, 2 questions real quick. Were you injured at all? And then you went back home and you're like, yeah, mom and dad, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And they're like, are you insane? But wow.
Exactly. The only injury I had was as we ejected out of the aircraft, we were probably 350, 400 knots at impact, right? And so moving pretty quick, and my oxygen mask ripped off and just cut my face a little bit. So a couple stitches, but honestly, I walked away pretty unscathed.
Wow.
You're pretty sore after an ejection, as you can imagine. It's a lot of G's in a short period of time, but pretty lucky, all things considered. And then you're right, yeah. And then you go home, and I think I'll do that.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, what a way to start. That's
it. Yeah.
When you landed, did you do your PLF and all that stuff that they taught you?
I just straight legged it.
You used to be 6'7".
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, I just crumpled. This is maybe a little bit of a random reference, but you ever seen Independence Day, right? Everyone knows the movie Independence Day.
Of course. Well,
Will Smith,
Prodigy's too young, but yeah, most of us have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a movie. It's on Netflix.
Check it out.
Yeah, the scene where Will Smith, and after he ejects, right, and he just hits the ground and crumples. It's like, it's like you just plow into the ground. It's not graceful. It's not like the chute is not that big. It was a pretty intense impact as he. And of course, I didn't know what I was doing, so I wasn't steering into the wind. So I just rode that tailwind all the way in, and just in the worst way possible.
There's some mountains around. I mean, obviously there's mountains around there.
Yeah.
Did you land in the mountains or where'd you land?
But right next to a road. Couldn't have been
Oh, wow.
couldn't have been better. Yeah, there's only one major road that runs through east-west Highway 50. That's, I think it starts in Maryland, it goes all across country. But we landed next to Highway 50, and people pulled over and hung out with them, and then the rescue helicopter came out and picked us up. And it's like at that point, I was like, yeah, I don't know that I really want to get in that helicopter. I think my luck's,
Yeah.
yeah.
I say that every time I get in a helicopter, but
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
You should have just hitchhiked a ride from the folks on the road there.
Yeah.
A little safer.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. But yeah, it was my thing. I was fortunate. I had my uncle was a Navy pilot, and was still active at the time. So that was kind of the spark that started me down that path. And so, I knew I wanted to do it. So kept down that process, and graduated in flight school, and then the rest is history.
So you did the F-18 obviously, and then you went over to the F-35. How was that transition? What did you obviously F-35 stealth. What are some of the differences there, Andy?
It's interesting. So I did the F-18 active, and then I got left the Navy and got hired as the sim instructor, and so never actually flown the F-35, which is pretty interesting. So to be an instructor on a plane you never flown, like, I've never done this before, but let me just tell you how you do this, right?
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, it's an incredible aircraft. Fifth gen, right? I think the F-18, right, they would say is fourth gen. We would say 4.5, right, in terms of capabilities. But yeah, it's impressive. It's a big jumbotron in front of you, touchscreen. It's like flying with a couple of iPads staring at you. Which, if you can remember old school, like steam dials and everything, those days are gone. Those days are gone. But where I work mostly is in the simulators, which is awesome. It's like I think I said earlier, it's basically a big video game that you get to play every day. I say it's like riding a roller coaster. You're in a 360-degree dome for the students, and you sit in the sim, and then you press a couple buttons in the front, and it drives you forward and then lifts you up into the dome. Wow. So you've got a nice nice view from the computer screen.
Is it 360-degree view? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Right. So you get 360 view, and students, I'd say close to half of their syllabus when they come through and train. And these are the guys and girls who just finished flight school, newly winged aviators. I'd say almost half is in the simulator, which is good, good and bad, right? Just from flight experience, but that's the way it goes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's interesting you brought that up because they're going through some legislation right now talking about the airline world, obviously different than the combat F-35 world, but lowering the minimums and being able to do more in the simulator, which I think, just like you said, is good and bad because it's nothing like the real thing.
That's right. Yeah.
Now, when you get shot down by the F-22 in the simulator, do you eject there too?
Obviously, yeah, preemptively.
Now, those simulators are just cool, right? I mean, you can, for all the aviation people out there that are geeking out right now, like me, the F-20, those simulators can sometimes talk to other ones, and you can actually do the dogfights and all that kind of stuff. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We do the quote dog fighting, or call it BFM. It's just too hard. It's like, as you can imagine, you just don't have we call the seat of the pants feel. There, and so you lose a little bit just from, you're not feeling the G's, right? You're not feeling any of that in a sim, obviously. So kind of there's some things you still have to get in the real aircraft and do.
You're not pulling the G's either.
Right? Yeah, exactly.
The real question there, Rob, is like, how much dogfighting does the F-35 do anyway? I mean, even in the jet, I know the F-15 community, and I don't know the equivalent in the Navy there, they always kind of said, well, this is we're going to practice, BFM, we call it, basic fighter maneuvering, just as like a fundamental training, shooting free throws, not sure that we anticipate doing this,
right.
in combat, because of the technology. We said that back in Vietnam, but no kidding, now you've got such technology that, and I'm sure the F-35 people probably don't anticipate, visual, combat anymore. They probably, and I would say the majority of the training is just those large force engagements and things like that. Andy, I don't know how the Navy views that, but that's kind of the way we're thinking about it.
It's a good point. That you brought up kind of the same analogy I was thinking of, is we said that it was done in Vietnam, right?
Yeah.
Or that era. And so they, maybe it was, I can't remember, they built, it might've been the F4, but no gun, right? Or, any of that. And all of a sudden like, oh, we should have planned for this. Even if you don't, it's just good from training, just to dynamically maneuver an aircraft and learn how to take it to the edge of its operating limits and operating envelope. So there's still goodness, right, to that training, whether or not you use it.
Well, plus, let me be a dumb tanker pilot for a second, which I always am. But, you got an F-22 that's stealth. You got a F-35 Joint Strike Fighter that's stealth. They just fly around. They can't ever see each other. And then when you do, right, that's when the dogfight happens. You got. I mean, I know you can probably. Somebody's radar is better than the other. Probably can't say which, but what happens in that environment?
Yeah, we'll probably strike this part from the the podcast.
Maybe if we won't. Yeah,
don't
go down that. Yeah.
Maybe if I talk, it'll be more classified, and I'll give it a shot. And Andy, you do the signal. But once you pass, like, first of all, if I get into even close to some kind of visual thing, you're going to get shot in the face. Probably if you don't get shot in the face, you're going to do one turn, and that missile is going to come off the rail, and it's going to go wherever you want it to go.
Yeah,
basically. Slight exaggeration, but when I can shoot my wingman that's 90 degrees off my right side,
that's crazy.
There's no more turning and burning. You know what I mean? It's like, it's unbelievable. I remember
ballistic's not going to help you there.
No, it's like, you can do whatever you want. Go ahead. But I remember, fighting this eagle, and this was back in the day when we didn't even have the AIM-9X, and I did a really good defensive. I stayed neutral in a defensive fight, which I was like, yes, awesome. He goes, yeah, you did pretty good. I said, debrief, did pretty good. You stayed neutral, but you were never out of, and now this is the old school Russian off-bore sight missile. So think about how much better ours is now. He's like, you were never out of that weapons employment zone. Never. Wow. And I was neutral the whole time, which was a win in defensive maneuvering. So think about that now. It's like, it's totally a basic building block exercise, just for fighter pilots still to have fun, I guess. Andy,
that's exactly right. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
That's what it's really all about.
You need to do exactly. You need to have that.
So now, Rob, here's your challenge. How do you transition from this to 529's?
Here we go.
I'm dying to see this.
Okay, folks, let's bring it down a notch from the high-speed stealth world of the F-35 and talk about your dreams. Okay? What are your dreams? What do you want to do in your life? What do you want? What do you want? Are you confident? 529. Are you confident you are putting your money to work for you to reach these dreams? If not, give us a call. 865-240-2292. Extension's 2 for Charlie, 7 for me. Nolan, what's your extension? Are you on there yet?
I don't know. I think you said like 9 last time. It's somewhere way down there, Rob.
12, 15, something.
That's right.
Andy, how can people reach you?
Contact Charlie.
Contact Charlie. Excellent. Your dreams are out there. Let's go get them, huh? Okay. That's it. Fights on. 529's. Who wants to go first? Charlie, you want to pick this one up?
Yes, sure. Throw me out there.
I'll ask some questions. What is a 5? That's right. After ejection stories and all that stuff. BFM.
I get to follow that, but
there you go. Yeah.
But yeah, let's dial it back a bit and talk about real world stuff that we're all concerned about. eventually when our kids are ready for school. So I'll just, kind of intro it, Rob, with some, we were talking before this with some generic questions. Here's what we're going to cover today. And Andy's going to help us walk through this stuff, like 529's. If you just went to a graduation of high school or college and you're thinking about this kind of stuff, college is really hard to fund, to plan for. It's crazy expensive. You're looking at a state school averages about 25 grand a year, room, board, tuition fees, all that kind of stuff. So $100,000 a pop, is about what you're thinking about. And that's a state school. So we're going to talk a lot today about how to fund it. Hey, what if my kid gets a scholarship? What good is a 529? What state do I use? What if I overfund it? What are my other options besides 529s if I'm afraid to, that I got to pay penalties when I take them out? How does it affect financial aid? We're going to look at talk about some of those things. What about Roth? Some people say, I'll just use a Roth IRA. One guy even said, hey, I'm going to use my Roth 401k. I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. So we'll talk about some of those things. And if we have time, we're starting to get questions too about a lot of our clients' young kids going into these new aviation programs like United's Aviate, Delta's Propel school, I think they call it, Southwest Destination 225. Can we use 529s for those things? So we'll talk to that as well.
Is it Propel or Propel?
Propel. I like to pronounce that. I got to enunciate those kinds of words.
Propel. I think it's Propel.
Propel is probably the correct, but yes. Propel. That's the way we say it in Maryville, Tennessee.
Maryville.
So that's all I got. Hopefully, now Andy's going to pitch back into this 529 fight and really show
Yes.
Yeah.
What is a 529? Anyone want to take that one? I've got a little definition if anyone. For those listeners out there that don't know what a 529 plan is, it's a tax-advantaged savings plan designed to help pay for education. It's originally limited to post-secondary education costs, but was expanded to cover K through 12 education in 2017 and apprenticeship programs in 2019. And the Secure Act 2.0, as we call it, setting every community up for retirement, Enhancement Act of 2019, the Secure Act of 2.0 was 2022. It also means that 529s can be used to pay off student loans and, in the right circumstance, fund a Roth IRA. And we'll get into the little nitty gritty of that. But two major parts of the 529 plan are the education savings plan, which is what we're going to mainly talk about today, I think, and then also prepaid tuition plans. So there's a little teaser for you. Let's talk about whatever anyone wants to talk about. Andy, you want to kick us off with your thoughts on the 529s?
Yeah, this was a good topic. I think what sparked my interest was we had my 2-year-old's birthday party last weekend here, right? And I was like, this is good stuff to talk about. Of course, as a financial planning nerd, I opened a 529 for the benefit of my son Jameson before he was even born, right? So it was like, of course, you can't open an account for someone who's not here yet, to put it in my name and then transfer it over him as the beneficiary when he was born. So that's just how I celebrate, when we announce it. It's like, hey, congrats. And we're like, all right, cool. I got to go open up a 529 plan now.
Yes.
Spoken like
priorities.
A true financial nerd.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So,
well, this is sorry, Andy, this is kind of softball. So can you just, if you open up a 529, can you just give it to your kid when they're born? You open it up before he was born. So who can you give it to?
Yeah, it's the rules are broad in that regard, which is good, right? Which is good. So, I could even open one up for the neighbor kids, right? If you really wanted to, and you could be the owner, right? The distinction here is owner, account owner, and then beneficiary, right? So I think most people, when they open a 529, they open it for their children, right? So they're the owner of the account. And the beneficiary, which is really what's important, is the child or the grandchild, or your niece, nephew, what have you,
whoever,
right? Yeah. And so that's who it's for, is that individual. You only have one beneficiary, but just like anyone, right, can open a 529 account really for the benefit of whomever they want. The rules on changing beneficiaries are also fairly liberal, which is good. And we start talking, a little bit more here on, hey, what if my kid or what if my grandkid decides they don't want to go to college, or they don't want to use it, or they don't use all of it, or they get a full scholarship, or they go to the U.S. Naval Academy, right? And you get the free education that way. So there's some good planning considerations from that perspective.
Yeah, I love the flexibility of those. I mean, you almost can't beat that. You can
Totally.
if your kid doesn't end up going to college, save it. You can save it for yourself, your wife, whoever. Pretty much, you can be philanthropic with it a bit and still gain those tax advantages, which is pretty cool. Charlie, you got anything else there? Prodigy, I know you're chomping at the bit here.
Yeah. What I was going to ask is just to go through the tax advantages. Tax advantages. There's some state tax advantages, which kind of helps to guide you on which one you might want to use. And then what if we don't use it? What if you do get the Naval Academy, unfortunately, scholarship? I would have killed you on the Naval Academy, by the way. But anyway, what if that happens? And what are the penalties? So, Andy, what do you think?
Yeah, I think, well, we'll use the Service Academy example there, right? Or you get the scholarship and you end up not having to use it. So fortunately, the legislation and rules around 529's allow for withdrawals in that case. Now I say allow for, and whether that's a good idea as a planner, right? Those are two very different things, right? Because everyone knows, hey, if you put this money in that's after tax, it's going to grow tax free, and if it comes out to those qualified distributions, education, room, board, all comes out tax free, like a Roth IRA, right? So if you don't use it, and say you do go get the scholarship, you get the withdrawal, which is penalty free. There's usually a 10% penalty if you end up doing a withdrawal, not for a qualified reason, but you still have to pay taxes, right, on the earnings portion of that 529. So that's where I say, from a planning perspective, yeah, even though you may qualify for that penalty-free withdrawal, there's still some opportunity here. And then back to that beneficiary discussion we just had, right? Or maybe you decide you want to go get a master's and get your MBA later. There's still some goodness, I think, from keeping that account rolling and working for you from an investment perspective. So that's my personal opinion.
Yeah,
in terms of like the withdrawal portion.
Yeah, and just to pile on a little bit, and that is, if you get a scholarship, let's say for $25,000, like you said, you can take out $25,000 from the 529. You will pay taxes on it, but you will not pay a penalty. So you can't take out $30,000 if you got a $25,000 scholarship. I think that's the important thing there. And yeah, like you said, Andy,
good point.
And if you've got that opportunity, then maybe there's some other siblings, maybe there's the next generation you could think about, which is a whole nother topic. But what about so you talked about this tax advantages of the account itself. What about different states? What should we think about there?
Yeah, well, I'm a California resident, so unfortunately, I don't get any tax benefits in my 529. But that means I don't have to use the California plan. Not that it's a bad plan, their scholar share. So I use Utah as my 529. Just happens to have what I think are really low cost, good investment options, all Vanguard funds. So that's where I chose to put it. So that's, I think, a good point is, hey, when you say I need to open a 529 for a kid or grandkid, do I have to use it in the state that I currently reside in? The answer is no, right? And the answer is you can use any 529 plan you want. And now, Charlie, back to your point, well, maybe there are reasons where we would want to use our state plan. So I grew up in Ohio, right? Ohio plan, if I were still living in Ohio, allows for $4,000 per year as a deduction, right? If you will, against your contributions if you're an Ohio resident, so Ohio taxes. So there are some times I think where it makes sense to use that state plan. If you're in Tennessee, right, probably not Texas, Florida, right? But that's where that's how I think about what plan do I want to use.
And just to clarify there, and I probably should have prefaced with this, we're talking state tax benefits. There's obviously
Correct.
the benefits of the 529. It's much like a Roth IRA where you're taxed up front, but if you use them for qualified education expenses, then all that growth is tax free, which is fantastic. Now, the state part of it, in Colorado, we're pretty lucky. You guys are out in Tennessee, so you don't have any state tax, which is not fair. But in Colorado, you can use 100% of the contribution you put into that 529 plan off the state tax. So that's a nice benefit for folks who are in those states. And I guess there's also something here we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about. Kevin wouldn't like it. There's state tax parity, right? And that's some states will allow you to, even if you're contributing to like an Ohio plan or a Utah plan, they'll still allow you to use that as a deduction for their state, if that makes sense. And there's 9 of them, which we could put on the show notes if that makes sense. Nolan, what do you got? You got something here on the 529s?
Yeah, I was gonna, Andy was kind of talking about which he was way ahead of the game. It sounds like opening the 529 before his son was born. But what about people, Andy, who maybe they're late to the game? Like, how many years does it have to be open? I think that would be an interesting thing for our viewers to know.
Yeah, it's a good question, right? So, there's some new Secure Act 2.0 pieces there about that was alluded to earlier. If you have it over 15 years, you can contribute, or you can then roll over a certain portion to the Roth IRA for the benefit of the beneficiary. Backing up, I don't think there's a limit to there's a time limit, right? And how long you have to have that account open. So I think you can start whenever, right? And sooner is better, but there's no better time than now if you want to start saving for those college for college for again that kid or grandkid.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I know we're kind of jumping all over, but we're hitting all the real good questions here, I think. And to Prodigy's point there, and what you said, Andy, is right on. Like, there's no limitations. You could open one tomorrow and use it, I think, the next day, which is different and gets to the question that the Godfather had from a client there about, well, I'll just use the Roth IRA. Well, you can, of course, the contributions that you've done to your Roth, you can take out tax and penalty free, but the growth, you need to have that for 5 years or be 59 and a half. So there's a limitation on the Roth IRA. Now, if your grandparents giving it, we'll get into that probably in a little bit here. That may be a different story because they're probably over 59 and a half and their Roth IRA is probably over 5 years old, but no limitation for just the 529, which is just fantastic, I think.
Yeah. Sometimes, and just to be clear, the limitation to transfer to a Roth from the new Secure Act, I think it was 15 years. That might be the only time limitation I know about. The account has to be open 15 years. Then you can transfer that to Roth in no more than the
good point. Yeah,
the
I was
contribution
talking for the college purposes.
Yeah, exactly. But you're right. Sometimes if the state tax benefits are good enough, sometimes we just tell the folks to funnel the money through the 529. Go ahead and funnel it through, put it in, take it out, get your state tax deduction, and then enjoy that a little bit. Enjoy that couple $200 state tax deduction that you get typically. But no, sometimes it's more than that. For example, like you said, and it varies by state. Rob, you get a full tax deduction in Colorado. Virginia is kind of unique in that one of our clients, an airline friend of mine, hey, I got 8 529s and 4 kids. I'm like, why do you have so many 529s? He's like, well, the deduction is per account, not per child. So he's, he's definitely getting the maximum there.
Smart.
And so it's very different from state to state. So think about it. Sometimes people like, I'm not even, it's a $150 deduction by the time it's all said and done, but that just depends on the state. So you got to weigh the options, and sometimes maybe going to, like Andy's doing there, a really good program where it's got very low cost index funds. Arkansas, I think, has a really good one. Utah as well. So those are some things to think about there. But
yeah, if you want to get into the nitty gritty, I don't think we'll get into it too much on this one, but the Morningstar ranks the 529 plans a certain way. I don't know what exactly goes into that, other than they supposedly look at the people, the process, the parent, and the price pillars. They call them the 4 Ps, the 4 categories there. But Arkansas, you mentioned there, Charlie, it's one of the tax parity states, one of the 9 there. So that's kind of nice, because its plan itself is not, a gold rated, they call them gold, silver, and bronze, and then neutral, I think, and then a negative. You don't want to be in the negative states, unfortunately. But if you look at that Morningstar report, just to gloss over real quick, the gold, bronze, silver, those are still kind of above average state plans. But really looking at those state tax credits that we've been talking about is super important, because even if you're looking at Utah, which is the Utah and Michigan, I think they're only the gold ones for 2022, according to Morningstar. You might be getting into those, but you won't get the state tax advantages if you don't perhaps use the state. So you got to be careful on that and look at it.
So Andy, you started a 529, and how do you know how much to put in the thing? What are you using, to calculate that?
Yeah, so that's, I think, the biggest question a parent will have, right? And the answer is, as it always is, and much of the finance world, is it depends, right? And so and it depends on, well, first of all, like, what can you contribute, right? And so making sure you're still taking care of all those other budgeting items, making sure you're still saving for your own retirement, your own 401k contributions, and taking care of yourself there. And so I think those are some of the important considerations. I really like Vanguard's college savings calculator. Like, hey, what's it going to cost, right? And so if you just Google Vanguard, college saving calculator, you can go in there and say, well, I'm thinking, what is the average for, and Charlie, you mentioned a little bit earlier some of those numbers, but the average for public, private, expensive, right? Maybe you're one of those parents who, like, my child is gifted, right? And so you can even select Harvard or Stanford. I wouldn't do that. I hope my kid's not listening. The 2-year-olds, they can be fragile. But you can select any school, right? If you're like, University of Tennessee, and all my kids were going to go to University of Tennessee, you can select that school. And so it'll tell you, if you want to fund 100%, 50%, here's how much you need to do. Here's the assumed growth rate of your portfolio. Other pieces, colleges are, they typically outpace inflation, right? The cost of college tuition is going up. And even if it stayed flat, it still is a pretty big expense, all things being equal, even 18, 15 years down the road. So I'd say that's a conversation you want to have with whoever your financial advisor is, in terms of, what is it that I want to do, or how do I want to fund this 529? But I think I'm going to get some sort of scholarship. For me, I took what's the average cost approach, and put an amount that I thought would get us a pretty good halfway there, right? And of course, I'm fortunate. I've got GI Bill transferability, and some other benefits as well that I get from my own personal situation to weigh against when I think about how much do I want to stock into this thing. I'm not curious, what are your all's perspective on kind of how much you want to put in the 529?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick, and it's certainly a question of prioritization. I've seen some families where they're like, it is our goal and mission in life that our kids have an education at, no matter what. And then there are other families that say, hey, look, we've got to make sure that our retirement is taken care of. And the old sayings, like, you can borrow for college, but you cannot borrow for retirement, right? So certainly is a thing we look at a lot, is hey, let's plan for your retirement. What do you want to do? What kind of assets do you have? And then we go, okay, what does it look like if you start really aggressively funding the 529? Does it take away from your retirement? How much does it take away from? And what are you willing to do there? So there's a balancing of priorities, if you will. Some people feel very, passionate about, hey, my child will have some skin in the game, something invested in that. Some are the opposite. So it's very personal, and I think that's where like you said, it depends comment comes into play, and it's very circumstance driven, family values driven, like Rob would say. So, boy, I just from my experience, there are times in my life where I'm like, I can put $50 a month in this 529 and that's it. And then there are times like, hey, I can really, really go after it. I'm going to get after it now and try to put more. And so for me, that's kind of been the way I've attacked it and go, you know what, we're going to do the best we can now. And then as this rolls around, we'll combine all these different strategies, whether that be self-funding, loans, whatever, you kind of use whatever you can. But that's kind of the way we've tackled it. And so I'm not anticipating Harvard either. So that helps a little bit.
Yeah, this is a great, I think this is a great rabbit hole to go down, because I'm just going to walk the dog for a second here. On our Flight 21, we had it as number 8 on the where you put your next dollar, or the financial order of operations, which is after your 401k, 403b, whatever you use them for retirement savings. So I love the quote you had there, Charlie. You can't get a loan in retirement. You can get a loan for education, but you can't in retirement, at least not easily. So I think that's important. You need to be funding certain things before you get to that point. And that, depending on your income, most of our clients are obviously funding all of these things. But some people aren't. And if you can't get to that point, then, maybe little Tommy is going to have to go out and get a loan, or might qualify for some kind of financial aid. Again, most of our clients, if you're hoping that you're going to qualify for financial aid as an airline captain, you're not. So I don't care what kind of witchcraft you use, you're probably just little Tommy or whoever is going to have to figure a way to you're going to figure a way to pay for it. A little fun fact here: according to the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center, women account for nearly 60% of all college students. At least that was by the end of the academic year 2021 to 2022. So I should be saying little Tamara's college really there, but that's for all of the hopeful college folks that are listening to this. There's more women in college than men. So, that's something that I know my son's probably looking at as well as
another reason not to go to the service academies.
Yes. Well, and this was one I stumbled upon too, was the average amount of parties that a college student goes to is about, I stole this from another podcast, but it was about 62 parties a year, which Andy, I don't know about the Naval Academy, but we definitely didn't have that many at the Air Force Academy. Tennessee,
no,
probably
it depends on how you define party, right?
Right. Yeah. Is a Saturday morning inspection count as a party?
Yeah, party.
We had a lot then.
Yeah.
Take that, Nolan.
Oh, that's funny. That's right, Nolan.
What are we doing wrong at Western Kentucky University? I don't know. 52 is pretty high.
62.
That's too funny.
That's too many parties. I couldn't hang like that.
No.
That was the hardest part of college, was all the other extraneous opportunities.
So going along, so it obviously very personal, Charlie, to what you're talking about. And this is where it gets into, hey, maybe a prepaid tuition plan because of inflation, like VizCap was talking about there. The prepaid tuition plans are one way to potentially help with the inflation that's going on right now in colleges. I can't see that it continues to be as high as it's been, because otherwise, college is gonna be $1 million. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that comes down, but we don't predict things here. So if you are confident that your kid is going to one of the state schools that has, one of the states that has prepaid tuition plans, then you might think about getting into those. A lot of drawbacks with those. Obviously, if your kid decides to go out of state, you probably won't have as much money as you would have in the regular 529 education savings plan because of the drawbacks of those types of plans. But if they do decide to go in state to one of the designated colleges there, then you might have locked in, if you did it way early. If little Tamara is going to, I think California has these, right? Andy, I don't know. If she's going, if she's going to a California state school and can get accepted, right? Which is a different story, I think, in California. But if they can get accepted and they're going, then you could lock in, maybe 18 years or whatever, 15 years of inflation adjusted college tuition. So now some of those plans also don't include, things for like room and board and meals and that kind of stuff. So just be careful with that. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on the prepaid tuition plans, guys?
Yeah, I think it's an awesome one, but I just don't think it's that common anymore. It used to be very common back in the mid 2000s, and then 2008 kind of came along. And a lot of the states decided, hey, this is too good of a deal, and they got rid of it. Florida still has one, and I think it's a great deal if your state has one, because like you said, inflation's has been running 5 to 6%. I agree with you, Rob. It seems like something's got to give at some point, or nobody will be able to afford school. But so far, that's not been the case. And just the last couple of things that I'll tell you as far as our common questions, and then I'll hand it back off to you all as we get close to the end here. But we've had a lot of people go to the feeder schools. I call them feeder schools, I guess, career development programs, Delta, United, Southwest. So far, it appears that the 529's are not allowed to be used there. And I say appears because for a 529 to be able to be used, it has to show up on the FAFSA eligible aid site. And help me out with the language there if I'm butchering this thing. But I don't think 529's are going to be able to be used for those at this point. Because of the types of schools, but that could change, and there's a lot of rules that may be open to interpretation there. But we're starting to see that more often. And the last thing I'll say is, back to the Roth IRA, Roth 401k. Well, there's a lot of risk there, and for the most part, our clients are not able to contribute directly to their Roth. So that means there's even more stipulations on when you take that money out. So it would take a whole nother podcast to address all of those. Just to suffice to say that the Roth 401k be very careful if you want to use that for education, because there's a lot of landmines there that's going to either hurt your retirement, cause you to pay tax and penalty when you didn't know it, et cetera, et cetera. So I just wanted to pitch in on that one last time, but yeah, that's it.
And to pile on there, it kind of defeats the purpose of the Roth 401k or your 401k there, because that's for retirement. It almost needs to be separated. I think it needs to be separated. Obviously, there are unique circumstances and values where you might decide differently, but that should be few and far between, I would think. Mm-hmm. Andy, what do you think on that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the new Secure Act 2.0, those changes that allow 35,000, with some stipulations that Charlie mentioned, to be converted to the beneficiary's Roth IRA. That's that kind of, if you were concerned about, hey, I'm putting this money into this 529 and I'm locked into this education, I could have used it elsewhere in my own Roth IRA. I think that solves some of those concerns to some extent. And certainly if your kid doesn't use the 529, well, you basically have baked in 35,000 into a Roth IRA, assuming you meet all those stipulations for that. So I think that's, to me, that I think eases the tension, if you will, of putting money into a 529 plan that may ultimately not get used. And man, I would love to have a Roth IRA at age starting at age 18. How awesome would that be?
Yeah.
That's, that just sets you up on a good trajectory. So I think there's some goodness there.
And I hate to burst some people's bubbles. I guarantee you, we have some listeners who are like, "Ooh, I could put 35,000 into a Roth and convert it over," and they're thinking, "Ooh, that's additional Roth IRA money I can use." Unfortunately, you cannot. You can use it, but I think you have to contribute it based on your contribution limits for that year.
That's right. Yeah.
So
So you're still limited.
yeah, so it's not an additional 35,000 to burst people's
Mhm.
bubbles. I'm sure they were excited about that. But Charlie, you brought up the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, which is not a great website. I don't know if you guys went on that or not, but not a great website. Again, most probably listeners won't be able to qualify for any kind of aid or grants, but they, scholarships, different story, obviously. But one important point about that is, if you're thinking about federal aid, and this is just kind of a fun little ism that I like to throw in there, because you talk about parents, their assets are usually counted for this federal aid and calculating it. However, grandparents, and that's where maybe the Roth IRA comes in. And just a quick caveat, just to add on here, multi-generational wealth can be created in a lot of different ways and unique ways. So you got to have a lot of trust there, right? Because if you're giving them, potentially giving them money or somehow gifting them money so they can get it into their Roth IRA, very unique strategy, obviously. It's their money now, and they can do whatever they want. They could use it for, anything. So got to have a lot of trust, but the grandparents' Roth IRA money does not count for the FAFSA calculation. So,
and Rob, you said Roth IRA money, and maybe you meant maybe you meant that, but 529 doesn't count either. Is that what you?
The 529
For the grandparents.
For the grandparent. Oh yeah, sorry. But no, I'm talking specifically Roth IRA doesn't count for the grandparents.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So the 529 plans owned by grandparents are held to the different standards as well.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
So yeah, point there being grandparents with 529 or Roth IRA, they have an ability to give and it not count towards that FAFSA cap, if you will. That make any sense?
Yes.
Nope.
I only hesitate. I know I'll probably cut this out, but it gets real nuanced, because I did read where, like, if they give the income from the 529, then the kid has to recognize that income anyway. We won't include that. I'll cut it out. But
yeah, I think that's changing 2024, 2025. There's the new rule where that's going away as well.
Yeah.
That
gets confusing because and this is the part we might include where the parents' 529s counts 5.64% of it counts as or reduces the FAFSA, and the grandparents' 529 doesn't count at all, with the minor exceptions of maybe income, etc.
Yeah. So real quick, this is important. How much can you contribute to your 529 plan? Who wants to take that one?
I'll start on that one. Yeah. So the answer is there is no limit, right? There's no limit. You can put as much as you want in there. Now I'll say two caveats to that. One being, while there are no contribution limits, each state has set a max account value limit. So I think California is somewhere up well above 500,000. I mean, these are big numbers.
529,000.
That's it. Yeah, that's how cute. How cute is that?
It is because it matches the 529.
Nice.
529. Yeah, exactly. So there's that, right? Once the account value hits that number, you can no longer contribute into that. And then, of course, you have to think about gift tax considerations as well, right? If you go above the 17,000, that counts, as an amount above that gift tax exclusion. So those would be like maybe the two caveats. I don't know. There's some super funding out there, right? Those are some good options as well. That's for the grandparent. If you want to bunch those, that's it. Exactly right. So if you want to bunch those, bunch your gift tax exclusion, you can pull those 5 years forward and do what's called a super fund, into a 529's. I think with my math's right, is that 85,000?
You got it.
Oof.
You must have went to Naval
Nice
Academy.
job. If you're married, times 2.
Times 2.
I can't do that math either. 170. So if you're,
I think
that's each
5 million,
spouse.
Charlie, but I could be wrong.
That's why I went to Tennessee. Right? But that's that 65 parties a year kicking in.
Oh, that's fantastic. Awesome. Yeah, I think that covers that question for sure. Anything else you want to throw in there, Andy?
No.
Awesome. Well, Charlie, Prodigy, what do you got? Any other questions you want to throw out?
Good.
Well, I think we covered it here. We talked about what 529 plans are, how do you kind of pick one, navigate some of those areas, and obviously you want to look at fees and expenses and state tax implications and maybe prepaid tuition plans, all that good stuff. What if your kid doesn't use it? We covered that. What can you use them for? We didn't get into that too much, but maybe next time. But you can use them for a whole lot of things. Wide variety there. We talked about state tax parity implications for those 9 states out there. That's it. Anyone have last closing thoughts? Andy, thank you so much for being on.
A pleasure.
Wealth of knowledge, just fun having you on. We definitely will have you back on if you have the time, for sure. And
would love to.
Yeah, your stories are fascinating, and obviously being a Georgetown advisor there too. You advise, right? You advise the faculty, so you're not just like a regular person. You advise the faculty. I don't know, what is that?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, there's just a few minutes left. So I work with their summer, the Master in Science and Finance program. They have a summer program where these students get to pair with companies, work with a couple corporate venture capital firms. And so my job is really just to help the students and to give them some perspective and keep the train on the tracks.
Oh, wow.
I'm the minder, if you will,
I love it.
for the school. So it's a good program and keeps me engaged with the school. So I enjoy it.
Nice. I love it. Anything else, Charlie? Prodigy?
That's it.
We
got it.
Okay. Couple of education-centered quotes, since we're talking 529's, for you to ponder on your drive or flight or morning or afternoon ritual, whatever you're doing there. First one's from Benjamin Franklin. You've probably heard of him. You will find the key to success under the alarm clock. And the next one by a pretty smart fellow too, Aristotle. Education is the best provision for life's journey. That is it. Let us be the first to welcome you to the final destination of Flight 60, F35's and 529's. And our special guest here, we've got VizCap, Andy Christopher. Thanks again, Andy, for being on. Did you learn anything from this free podcast? If so, pay it forward. Tell someone about it, or at least leave us a review. We aim to make the world better stewards of their money. Help us do this. Please shoot us any questions you have that you'd like us to cover on the next questions from the flight deck. And remember, as Emerson said, the world makes way for those who know where they're going. And as I say, so plan accordingly. From all of us at the Pilot Money Guys, we optimistically wish you smooth rides and soft in the zone landings.
Leading Edge Financial Planning, LLC is a registered investment advisor. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where Leading Edge Financial Planning and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. For additional information, please visit our website at www.leadingedgeplanning.com. The information provided is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute investment advice, and it should not be relied on as such. It should not be considered a solicitation to buy or an offer to sell a security. It does not take into account any investor's particular investment objectives, strategies, tax status, or investment horizon. You should consult your attorney or tax advisor. The views expressed in this commentary are subject to change based on market and other conditions. These documents may contain certain statements that may be deemed forward-looking statements. Please note that any such statements are not guarantees of any future performance, and actual results or developments may differ materially from those projected. Any projections, market outlooks, or estimates are based upon certain assumptions and should not be construed as indicative of actual events that will occur. All information has been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but its accuracy is not guaranteed. There is no representation or warranty as to the current accuracy, reliability, or completeness of, nor liability for, decisions based on such information, and it should not be relied on as such.